choosing to educate their children at home, with homeschooling figures up almost 20% in New South Wales alone. Meanwhile, reading, maths and science results are still falling, and according to a Public Education Foundation report, that could cost the economy $120 billion over the next half-century. David Roy is a lecturer in education at the University of Newcastle, and he's with us now. Very good morning to you. Okay, so a spike in homeschooling. Is this a sign that people have lost faith in the education system?
No, it's not that they've lost faith. I think it's more that some groupings are making a choice to say we can do better at home, or we don't have any other option but to homeschool. And I think it's that group more than any that concerns me the most. And actually that came out in a parliamentary inquiry recently in New South Wales as well.
Yeah. So what reasons are they giving for turning to homeschooling?
Well, the biggest reason is philosophical. It's just people want to educate in their way, maybe not trapped by the systems, whether it be a non-government or a government system. One of the largest growing areas is special needs. People are choosing to homeschool, and when you speak to many of those parents, it's because the schools are either not enrolling them, which is technically against the law, or they're not providing support for those children. And that's a massive take on by those parents, because if you homeschool, you must have one parent at home, which means that's one less income. Families with a disability have already got a reduction in income because of the outgoing cost for their children with a disability. So there's an issue there that some politicians are starting to look at.
That is a massive problem, and as you say, it is technically illegal for a state school to refuse a child with special needs, but we all know they just sort of go quietly, look, I think perhaps your child's needs might be served better elsewhere. Do you know there's down the road, there's a lovely school. Have you thought about private? What about the other kids? I sort of worry about the other group of kids where parents, the classic sort of, hippie adventurers who decide that they're better teachers than the school system. Surely that is a problem. Surely if a parent thinks that they can do a better job than the state school system, we have to look at the state school system and say, what is going wrong that it is not instilling often its values that people don't like. Often it's quagmired by bureaucracy, it's quagmired by this weird impenetrable language that NAPLAN tests people on. What is going wrong that we're not seeing the growth there that we are in homeschooling?
I think one of the big issues that's going on there is there's so much bureaucracy, and we are kind of losing our trust in teachers, we're losing our trust in principals. I don't have a preference for private, for Catholic, for public. I'm interested in great schools for kids to succeed, and I think there are bigger issues going on there. We're not listening to the people who are actually delivering. If I had an issue with health, I want to hear what the doctors are saying, the nurses are saying, and what actually the patients are saying. And perhaps we need to start listening to teachers, to educators, and to the very children who are actually going through these systems.
That's a novel idea, isn't it?
Is part of the problem that schools, the public schools, and I'm a strong believer in public schools, but I'm also a strong believer in speaking the truth, that there's a bit of a... It doesn't take much for there to be a tipping point where there's a death spiral where people think, well, the public schools are not that good in my area. I'm going to take my kid out and send him to a private school, Catholic school, scrape together whatever pennies, or I'm going to put them in the nearest selective school I can find and pay for a tutor to get them to that selective school. And then that state school ends up becoming basically the basket that is just there to collect all the kids who fall through the cracks. So the next parent that comes along says, well, all the kids that go there are troubled, it's a low-performing school, and you just end up creating these sort of educational slums. Is that a problem?
Absolutely. We've been focusing too much on saying funding. We just need to fund schools more. Well, no. You need to look at housing. You need to look at jobs. You need to look at employment. You need to look at the social conditions in an area. They all feed into each other. So if there's no jobs, there's no housing, and you've got deprivation, that school's going to be fighting battles before they even get the kids to learn. And so their results will go down. And of course, the whole NAPLAN issue is another ballgame. What are we actually testing, and should we be testing that? Because we're making that comparison and saying our results are going down. Well, maybe our results in NAPLAN are going down, but is NAPLAN actually a valuable judge of what is actually going on in schools? because for some schools with poor NAPLAN, there's amazing support going on to the kids in that place to lift them as human beings.
So the kids that are being homeschooled are the ones that have been falling behind?
No. Some families make a choice just to homeschool, whether it's for philosophical, for religious, for special needs. Only 0.45%, and it's lowering, do so for bullying. So bullying is not an issue.
I thought bullying would be like the main reason, but for some reason, yeah?
It's the most non-existent reason.
Really?
Parents realise that bullying happens, schools are dealing with it better, and kids need to develop a resilience as well within themselves so they can actually support their friends, support themselves. So that's not an issue. People are choosing to homeschool because they think they can do it better, or sometimes they can. Many parents are teacher qualified, and all the curriculum's online already. So,
isn't that a sort of bad thing though, that people have so little faith in the school system that they're choosing to homeschool kids? Because don't we want our kids to be, they need to be socialised, they need to learn how to respond to conflict, to make friends.
They do that in homeschooling as well. You find there's lots of homeschooling communities, so they're actually getting together, and they actually meet in a variety of ages, more so than they sometimes do in their own school. What I find interesting is the number of families have got a teacher who are part of that homeschooling grouping, and those teachers are saying, I might teach in a mainstream school, but I want my kids to be homeschooled. I don't want my own kids to go there. And that says to me...
That's not really putting your money where your mouth is it?
No.
It's also saying there's an issue going on that we're not dealing with. We're maybe tinkering on the edges of school reform rather than the radical reform that needs to happen across the board.
It's really great insight from you, David Roy. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Now, before we go to the break, we need to apologise for